I gave them 17 years of my life. Loyalty, sacrifice, missed family dinners, and they fired me without a second thought. But they didn't know I'd been quietly preparing for the day they'd forget my name. And when they did, I was ready. Hi, my name is Daniel Hayes. I'm 42 years old, and until recently, I was a senior operations manager at a large logistics company. This isn't just a story of humiliation. It's a story of awakening. If you've ever felt like your hard work meant nothing, like your name was just another file in a drawer, then this story is for you. Before we get into it, don't forget to hit subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. I want to know your story too. Let's begin. 17 years. That's how long I gave them. I was 25 when I started, young, driven, willing to do whatever it took. I skipped vacations, stayed late, missed birthdays. I was the go-to guy. Ask Daniel, they'd say. I solved problems before they started. I trained managers who eventually outranked me. I never complained. So when I walked into that conference room on a Tuesday morning, I wasn't expecting anything unusual. Maybe a new project, maybe another team shift. But the moment I saw the HR rep sitting next to my boss, something inside me went cold. We've decided to move in a different direction. That was it. No warning. No thank you. Just a few sterile words that hit harder than I thought possible. I asked if it was performance-related. They shook their heads. This isn't personal, they said. But how could it not be? I packed my things in a box that felt way too small for 17 years of dedication. No one said goodbye. No one made eye contact. It felt like I was erasing myself from a building I helped keep together. I got in my car, drove home in silence. My hands on the wheel, my chest tight, my mind running 1,000 miles a minute. What would I tell Emily? What would I tell my daughter when she asked why I wasn't going to work tomorrow? But when I walked in, Emily didn't panic. She listened. She held my hand. And then she said something that hit me harder than the layoff ever could. Maybe this is what you needed. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in front of my laptop and opened a folder I'd hidden in plain sight for years. I called it Project Phoenix. It was everything I'd ever wanted to do. My business plan, my product ideas, my freedom. I built it slowly between shifts, on weekends, in quiet hours while the world slept. I never thought I'd use it. I only built it because I needed to believe I could. But now I had no choice. And maybe that was exactly the push I needed. They thought they broke me, but they had no idea. I had already started building my escape. The morning after I was fired, the sun didn't look any different. But I did. I wasn't the same man who walked into that office just 24 hours ago. Something had shifted. For the first time in nearly 2 decades, I didn't have anywhere to be. No calendar alerts. No team to manage. No decisions to make except one. Was I going to start over, or was I going to take back control? I sat at the kitchen table, staring into my black coffee until it went cold. My wife, Emily, gently placed a hand on my shoulder. She didn't say much, but I could see it in her eyes. Worry, mixed with hope. We'd been through things before. Layoffs, medical scares, debt, but never anything like this. Losing a job doesn't just take your income. It takes your identity. But not this time. Because this time, I had Project Phoenix. I opened the folder and stared at it like it was my lifeline. And maybe it was. Years ago, I started building a business model for something I'd always wanted to try. A consulting firm, small at first, helping struggling warehouses automate processes and reduce costs. I'd written documents, created sample contracts, even designed a mock website. Back then, I told myself it was just a hobby, a way to keep my mind sharp. Now it was all I had, and maybe all I needed. That day, I made a decision. No more looking back. I was going to treat this like war. And my mission was clear: turn my backup plan into my new full-time purpose. I spent hours revisiting every file, polishing every pitch, updating numbers that hadn't been touched in years. It felt good, like reclaiming a part of myself I'd buried under deadlines and performance metrics and corporate speak. By afternoon, I had a list of 10 potential clients, small logistics companies in the area I knew were struggling. Some were run by old colleagues. Some were people I'd met at conferences. I drafted emails, carefully, respectful, but confident. No begging, no desperation, just value. Hi, Mark. I know you're busy, so I'll keep this brief. After 17 years in logistics leadership, I'm now offering hands-on consulting for warehouse optimization. I can help you reduce waste and improve turnaround time by at least 20% guaranteed. Want to talk? I hit send on all 10. Then I stare at my inbox like it owed me something. And for hours, it stayed empty. Doubt started creeping in. What if this was stupid? What if I really was just another middle-aged guy trying to reinvent himself after getting canned? That evening, I told Emily what I'd done. I expected her to say I was rushing it, that I should take time to process. But she didn't. She just smiled and said, "It's about time." We toasted with cheap wine, sitting cross-legged on the floor like we used to when we had nothing. And you know what? It felt like everything again. That night, I couldn't sleep. My thoughts were loud, filled with risk, with fear, with excitement. I was no longer just trying to survive. I was building something that was mine. At 2:13 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was an email reply from Mark. "Let's talk tomorrow. 11 a.m. Interested to hear what you've got." I stared at the screen in disbelief. My first meeting was set. I wasn't ready, but I said yes anyway. Because if I'd learned anything from 17 years in a thankless job, it's this. Nobody's ever really ready. You just start moving and you learn as you go. The world thought it could throw me out like I was nothing. But now, I had something no one could take away from me. Momentum. At 10:50 a.m., I was sitting in my car outside a modest 2-story brick building in an industrial complex I hadn't visited in years. The company was called Eastline Freight. Mark, the CEO, and I had crossed paths a few times at supply chain expos. Friendly guy. Smart. But back then, I had a name badge from a big company, and he was still fighting to get his business off the ground. Now, we were both standing on different edges of risk. I didn't walk in with a suit. I wore a plain button-up, tucked in my only clean jeans, and carried a worn leather notebook I'd once used for daily meeting notes. I didn't have a portfolio or printed decks, just clarity, desperation, and everything I had learned the hard way. Mark greeted me at the front with a handshake that was firm but distracted. I could tell instantly. He wasn't sure why he had agreed to meet me. Or maybe he had, but didn't expect me to show up so fast. We sat in a break room that doubled as a conference space. No big office, no receptionist, just 2 paper cups of vending machine coffee between us. "All right, Dan," he said, tapping his pen. "What VE you got?" No warm-up, no small talk, and I appreciated that. I leaned forward and started talking, not like a salesman, but like someone who had walked through fire. I explained the choke points I'd seen in their kind of operations, the ways wasted motion cost real money, and how a few layout changes in a digital intake system could shave off 15% in lost time. I even showed him a mock dashboard I'd built on Google Sheets. Rough, but functional. He didn't interrupt. He didn't nod, either. He just watched. When I was done, I waited. 30 seconds, then a full minute. Then Mark sat back and said, "I just let go of 2 supervisors last week. I can't afford another full-time hire. But if you can come in 3 times a week for a month and help us fix our dock intake mess, I'll pay you a project fee." He said the number. It wasn't much. Less than what I'd made in 2 weeks of my old job. But it was a start. And more than that, it was mine. "I'll take it," I said. I drove home feeling both elated and terrified. I was officially a business owner. A one-man consulting firm. No fancy brand name. No office. But I had something I hadn't had in years. Ownership over my own time. Emily met me at the door. I didn't say a word. I just nodded once, and she knew. She kissed me hard and whispered, "That's one." That night, I opened a blank spreadsheet titled Clients. Under it, I typed 001 Eastline Freight. Start date, May 3rd. Scope, dock intake optimization. Target outcome, reduce daily unload time by 20%. Status, in progress. I stared at that row like it was gold, because to me it was. Over the next few days, I threw myself into the work. I was back in a warehouse, but it felt different this time. Every decision, every fix, it didn't go through a board. It didn't get filtered by layers of approval. It was just me and the results. At the end of the first week, Mark pulled me aside. "You know, Dan," he said, "you don't look like a guy who just got laid off." I smiled and replied, "That's because I didn't lose anything. I just got redirected." By the second week, something even more unexpected happened. A manager from a neighboring logistics company showed up at Eastline for a tour. He saw one of the changes I'd made to their intake tracking and asked who built it. Mark pointed at me. 2 days later, I got a LinkedIn message. "Hey Dan, heard you're doing consulting work. Would love to talk." And that's when I knew momentum is real. When you stop waiting for permission, things start to move. The old me would have waited for security. The new me? He builds his own door and walks through it. The second client came faster than I expected. And it wasn't because I was better than anyone else. It was because I showed up. That's it. I answered the message. I said yes to the meeting. I showed up with clarity and a notebook, while others were still updating their resumes or trying to figure things out. The man's name was Darren Clark. He ran a mid-sized logistics hub out in Riverside. They'd recently switched warehouse software, and the rollout was a disaster. He'd heard from Mark that I was good with chaos, that I could make systems out of messes. I wasn't sure if that was a compliment or a warning, but I took the meeting. It was different this time. We met at a real office with glass walls and espresso machines and sleek ergonomic chairs. Darren wore a dark vest, sharp watch, and the confidence of someone who wasn't used to asking for help. But after 20 minutes of listening to him talk, I realized something. Even the guys who look like they're winning are drowning sometimes. Their warehouse wasn't broken. It was just directionless. There was no leadership, no accountability. The software was fine. The problem was human. The real issue was culture. People were blaming tools instead of fixing habits. And that I knew how to fix. I gave Darren a straight answer. Your problem isn't tech. It's that no one's owning the outcomes. Your supervisors are floating. Your crew's reactive. Your KPIs are vague. You're bleeding time because no one has clarity. He blinked. No one had ever said that to him. But I had nothing to lose by telling the truth. That's what freedom looks like. Darren leaned back and nodded. All right, Hayes. Prove it. We signed a 4-week contract. Double what Eastline paid me. Now I had 2 clients and not a single dollar spent on marketing. Just word of mouth. Just results. Emily couldn't stop smiling when I told her. This thing is real now, she said, wiping her hands on her apron. It's been real, I replied. But now it's starting to grow teeth. Still, that night, I sat in bed wide awake, thinking about how far I want to take this. I wasn't just freelancing. I was laying bricks for something that might last decades. But I knew that meant I had to stop playing small. No more hiding behind modest goals or humble beginnings. I needed to get serious. The next morning, I opened a new document titled The Real Plan. At the top, I wrote one sentence. What would this look like if it were easy? Then I mapped it out. A small team of 5 consultants. Monthly retainers instead of hourly contracts. A branded site with testimonials and a free audit tool. Webinars to teach mid-level managers better flow design. A simple message. We fix broken warehouses fast. This wasn't a hustle anymore. This was a company, and I was its founder. Later that week, I called an old colleague, Jillian, who had left corporate 2 years before and started freelancing in project coordination. I pitched her a simple offer. Help me scale this. Be my back end, my eyes on process, my detail partner. I'll pay you as we grow. She didn't even hesitate. I've been waiting for a call like this. I hung up and looked out the window. I had no office, no funding, no fancy pitch deck, but I had clarity, and clarity is more powerful than capital. By the end of the month, Eastline extended my contract. Riverside offered a full-service retainer, and a third inquiry hit my inbox, this time from a national brand that had heard my name in a supply chain Slack channel. I sat at my kitchen table, same seat where I'd once stared into cold coffee after getting fired, and realized something. Getting laid off wasn't a curse. It was a reveal, a door swinging wide open, a quiet permission to become the version of myself I had only imagined in silence. They let me go thinking they'd stripped me of purpose, but they just set me free. Momentum is a strange thing. You don't really notice when it begins. It doesn't announce itself. It starts with a decision, a tiny flick of action, and then another. Before you know it, doors start opening that you never even knocked on. It had been 3 months since I was fired. 3 months since I walked out of that lifeless conference room holding a cardboard box and a hollow ache in my chest. And now, here I was getting email invites to speak on virtual panels, having coffee chats with CEOs of companies I once begged to notice me, and waking up with more purpose than I've felt in years. My name, just Daniel Hayes, was now being mentioned in circles I hadn't been invited to. Old colleagues started reaching out. Heard you're doing some kind of transformation consulting now. Mind if we catch up? Recruiters who had ignored me 6 months ago were suddenly flooding my inbox with offers for VP roles. Funny, isn't it? Once you stop waiting to be chosen, you start getting noticed. But I wasn't interested in going back. I wasn't building something to get hired again. I was building so I'd never need to ask for a job again. My third client turned out to be the breakthrough. It was a mid-sized distribution chain that had recently merged with another logistics brand. They were a mess, different systems, different cultures, and a warehouse team on the brink of quitting. The COO, a sharp but tired woman named Lena, called me after reading my name in a LinkedIn thread. "You've got a reputation now," she said. "People say you walk in and clean up fast." That's true. I could have gone humble, but I was done playing small. I said yes. That's exactly what I do. We signed a 6-week engagement. It paid more than I used to earn in 2 months. But more than the money, it gave me something I hadn't had in years. Validation on my own terms. I built systems, trained their mid-levels, cleaned up their cross-communication nightmare. I even helped restructure their floor plan, using nothing more than a whiteboard and some cardboard mock-ups. When it was done, Lena shook my hand and said, "I didn't just hire a consultant. I found a fixer, and fixers are rare." That stuck with me. I wasn't just solving problems. I was becoming known for solving problems. And reputation, real reputation, is the most powerful form of marketing. With 3 clients under my belt, I finally launched the website. It wasn't flashy, just a simple homepage with a clear message. We fix broken warehouses. Below that, a form. Get your free audit. Within 48 hours, I had 4 inbound leads. One was from a company based in Denver. Another from Atlanta. People I had never met, never spoken to. Somehow they had found me. That night, I sat on the couch with Emily, laptop on my knees, and scrolled through the emails. She looked at me with a half smile and said, "So, when are you going to admit you're not starting anymore?" I looked at her, smiled back, and said, "I think I'm already in it." But it didn't feel like I was in something. It felt like I had become something. Not a consultant, not a freelancer, not even an entrepreneur. I had become free. Free to choose my work. Free to pick my clients. Free to walk away from people who didn't respect my time. Free to take my daughter to school in the morning without looking at the clock. Free to build a life I no longer needed to escape from. And in that quiet, beautiful freedom, I discovered something even deeper. Sometimes, when life pushes you off the edge, it's not the fall that matters. It's the wings you didn't know you had, unfolding midair. It came on a Thursday morning. I was reviewing a supply chain dashboard for a client in Texas, halfway through a cold cup of coffee, when I saw the email. The subject line was bland, strategic opportunity discussion. I nearly archived it without reading until I saw the sender. Jeffrey Harmon, Senior Vice President. My former employer. The same man who sat silently in the corner while HR delivered my severance speech. The man who didn't even shake my hand on the way out. Now he was emailing me directly. I stared at the screen for a few seconds. Then I opened it. "Dan, I hope you've been well. I've been hearing some very interesting things about the work you're doing lately. We're undergoing a major restructuring on our operations side, and we'd like to explore the possibility of you coming in as a senior consultant on a short-term basis. I think your insight would be invaluable. Let me know if you're open to a conversation." "Jeff." I sat back in my chair, blinking. Part of me wanted to laugh. Part of me wanted to reply instantly with a one-word response. No, but I didn't. Instead, I closed the laptop and went for a walk. There's something surreal about being asked back by the very people who discarded you. It's a strange power shift. But power, I was learning, isn't in revenge. It's in choice. And I had it now. When I got back, Emily was preparing lunch. She looked up, saw my face, and asked, "Who emailed you?" "Jeff," I said. Her eyes widened. "Your old boss." I nodded. "He wants to hire me." She waited quiet. Then, "Are you going to do it?" I didn't answer right away. That afternoon, I sat in my home office, the same space that once felt like a prison in the early days of unemployment and thought long and hard. Was I doing this to prove a point? Or was there real opportunity here? So I called him. He picked up after 2 rings, almost like he was waiting. "Dan," he said, with that overly professional tone, "really glad to hear from you." We talked for 20 minutes. He danced around an apology, never said the word, but it was woven in his tone. He spoke about their issues: leadership vacuum, process delays, loss of morale. In a moment of honesty, he said, "We made some decisions too fast. And I'll be the first to admit, we didn't recognize certain people's value until it was too late." There it was, not an apology, but an admission. He offered a 6-month consulting engagement, high-paying, executive-level access, full control over the process. And you know what? I said yes. Not because I needed the money, not because I wanted to go back, but because I wanted to walk through the same doors they once pushed me out of, this time on my terms. They didn't get to own me anymore. Now I was the outside expert, the one with leverage, authority, and clarity. And that felt like justice, not revenge. In the first meeting, I sat across from the same boardroom table. Same chairs, same fake plants in the corner. But everything had changed. Because this time, I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I spoke with precision. I told them what needed to change bluntly. I challenged their workflows. I pointed out where they were bleeding efficiency and how their internal teams have been silenced for years. And they listened, because they had to, because now I wasn't Dan from operations. I was Daniel Hayes, founder of Hayes Optimization Group. When the meeting ended, I walked out feeling nothing but calm. No bitterness, no triumph, just quiet closure. Sometimes, life gives you a chance to return to the scene, not to relive the pain, but to reclaim your name. That night, Emily and I sat on the back porch with glasses of red wine. "You went back," she said, smiling. "How did it feel?" "Like I was never meant to stay," I said. "Only meant to leave and come back better." 6 months passed. The consulting contract with my old company ended with a handshake and a surprisingly warm farewell. I helped them restructure their operational teams, implement automation in 3 warehouses, and even train 2 directors to lead with clarity, something the company had lacked for years. But I never once considered staying, because now I knew something I had never known during those 17 long years of service. I didn't belong to anyone. I belonged to the work I chose, to the clients I respected, to the life I was building, not the job I once had. After that final project, I took 2 weeks off, not because I was tired, but because I could. Emily and I took our daughter on a road trip across the coast, something we used to talk about, but never had the time or mental space for. We stayed in small towns, ate at roadside diners, and laughed over cheap pancakes and motel coffee. And I realized success doesn't always look like headlines and corner offices. Sometimes it looks like being fully present. Sometimes it sounds like your daughter saying, "I like this version of you, Dad. You're not always tired anymore." When we got home, I returned to work, not out of obligation, but because I missed it. Emails were waiting. Clients needed guidance. A company in Boston had left a voicemail offering to fly me in for a training session. But I wasn't rushing, because for the first time in my life, I was in control of the pace. I hired Jillian full-time. We brought on a junior consultant. I rented a small co-working space with good light and strong coffee. The business was growing, but I was careful. I didn't want it to become another machine. I felt trapped inside. Instead, I made one clear rule. We don't chase contracts. We chase alignment. If a client didn't respect the process, we walked away. If the work drained more than it gave, we passed. And the funny thing, the more boundaries I set, the more the right clients showed up. By the end of that year, Hayes Optimization Group had served 11 companies. We had built a reputation for speed, transparency, and transformation. Not because we were flashy, but because we were real. People didn't hire us to fix systems. They hired us to make things work again. And in doing so, they often found their teams, their culture, even their confidence again. And every time someone asked me how I started this thing, I'd smile and tell them the truth. I got fired. That's always how I start the story, because that's what everyone remembers. The end that looked like failure. But what they don't see is what came next. The quiet rebuild, the small wins, The nights filled with self-doubt and early mornings filled with grit. The freedom born not from brilliance, but from persistence. So no, I never got my job back. But I got my time, my name, my dignity, and something even better than a paycheck. A life I chose. The day I got fired, I walked out of that building feeling invisible. Now, I walk into rooms I was never invited to, and people listen when I speak. Because I stopped waiting to be picked. I picked myself, and that has made all the difference.